Good morning from wherever you're watching us from. That was such an interactive session with Trevilla and Charity. Make sure you catch them again tomorrow morning from 8 a.m. all the way to 9 a.m. But now, welcome to the Oracle News Brief. As promised, I did tell you that today we are going to be having a panel to speak about the few changes that the president has been doing in the government since the protest started. So today we are kind of navigating this particular shift. What does it mean for the country? What impact does it have on the country's economy? What impact does it have on the Gen Z protest? And with me on set, I have three gentlemen. Today, hakuna ratio. It is just me and three gentlemen. I'll start on my right. I have Ngomo Kahyu. He is a political commentator and analyst. Then in the middle we have George Ngugi, and he is a political scientist as well as a public administrator. And to the far end we have SK Kajwang. He is a national youth leader. Now they can only introduce themselves and give them a proper introduction. So I'm going to start with the far end, Kajwang.
Thank you so much. This is SK Kajwang. The former president of the Student Union of Mount Kenya University. I'm also an author, a leadership enthusiast, and a national youth leader who represent the interest of the youth of this country. Thank you.
Yeah, that is right. Then Ngugi.
Good morning indeed to our viewers. My name is George Ngugi Gachoka. I'm a political scientist and a public administrator. The title says it all.
Then to my right.
Good morning, our viewers. My name is Brian Kahiongomo, hail from Kiambu. I'm a political scientist, also a businessman in the city. Yes.
Yeah, and over the past few weeks, we've seen the president make a few changes, including austerity measures. We did see him reduce the budget of the government advisors to 50%. And among other changes, we've seen at least the dissolving of 47 corporations that have duplicating functions. We've also seen the renovation budget kind of reduced. We've also seen the office of the First Lady, office of the Prime Cabinet, the spouse of the Prime Cabinet Secretary also kind of dissolved, and also the wife to the deputy president. And we've seen an appointment of an independent task force which has also been stopped and suspended by the government. Now these are some of the measures that the president has taken, let's say, as a result of the protest. And I'm going to start with you, Kajwang. Are we finally seeing a government spending change? Is it that we are finally leaving that moment where government have decided we are going to cut on our budgets?
Let me begin by really saying, without any fear of contradiction, that this government has lived in the limelight of opulence and arrogance, even from those in the executive. And what we have seen is notwithstanding the fact that the things that they are telling us are not true. They are just living in hypocrisy, and we cannot really live to the light of the austerity measures that they promised Kenyans a week ago. So we are looking forward towards the implementation of the same, but failure to which we are still on the street. Yes.
And Ngugi, do you think that the protests have finally bore fruit? Because the Gen Zs have been in the streets for almost 2 weeks now before the protests got all violent. We did see them again yesterday, Occupy held. Do you think that these protests are finally bearing fruits?
They are, in one way or the other. They are, because indeed the first attempt they had and their main goal initially was about the withdrawal of the finance bill. That did come in handy when the president indeed said he is not going to assent to the bill. But on the question of whether among the things they were saying during the protest on expenditure, whether it's coming in, there's a catch that we need now to see across this realm. What the president did, he did stop the assent to the finance bill. And their finance bill initially, to a nutshell, is all about raising revenue. But the expenditure is on the other side. It starts with the budget. You have your program set. Then, after the finance bill has either been assented to or otherwise, we go now to appropriation bill. The appropriation bill was assented to by the president. In short, if the appropriation bill was assented to, it now gives the government the right, the constitutional right, to appropriate money on where the programs had been set. So, what failed is the collection of more revenue. But whether the president decides to borrow to come and fund the programs that had been put in the budget, that's another question. So, in my analysis, the question is not whether the government is going to reduce its expenditure, because the office of the First Lady, the office of the Second Lady, the office of the Prime Cabinet Secretary, the office of the spouse to the Prime Cabinet Secretary, the allocation had already been made in the budget. The expenses were already in the budget. What the Gen Zs were protesting against was raising the money to fund that. But the appropriation bill was signed. So the president has the legal mandate to go get wherever he wants to get the money from and fund those offices. Yes.
And back to you, Gashoka. One of the reasons why the Gen Zs were actually in the street was on the IEBC, and apparently today at 9, it's already 9:26, so I think he has already signed it. The president was supposed to sign this particular bill so that he can, so that we can allow the IEBC to be formed again, or the commissioners to be appointed. Are we seeing a situation where the president has now stopped hearing and now he's listening?
What I'll say is there were engagements that people fronted that the IBC should be reconstituted so that people can be able to recall their MPs because of voting yes against the people's will, which is the first mandate of a member of parliament is legislature, which is making of laws in parliament, which they failed, and the people find the need to recall them, so they need the IBC. So the president assenting to it is just a formality because he was supposed to assent to it, because we don't take, that is his work, and that is one thing that this government needs to know. It's not that they're doing us favors, they're supposed to be working, and that is one thing that I think the Gen Zs want to drive across to them, because if you find everyone is asking them, it's not about even dialogue, it's about people being accountable and being doing their work. So the president was supposed to send this bill of the IBC to us to reconstitute the commissioners, so as to bring the IBC to functionality, so as also to allow voter registration and allow the IBC to work. So it's part of his work. I won't say it's part of listening. It's part of his work.
It's part of his work.
Yes.
And Kajwang, according to the statistics, the president will cut around 177 billion from the allocated budget to make sure that the country is financed. Now, what does this mean for the country? What do we expect with this particular budget cut? Because we did hear some MPs also saying that among the key functions or key structures to be affected, including CDF, and we know that is a very important body when it comes to local communities. So as a country, what situation are we looking at?
Thank you so much. First and foremost, under Article 95 of our Kenyan Constitution, that NGCDF by itself is unconstitutional. So the main important aspects and patterns that we should be able to look at as a people, because in this country we have been fed up with the tendency whereby those in government think they have a capitalization of ideas, and rather they do not want to listen to the inputs from people. And if we are invited to a participatory approach, a kind of a view, whereby even the Financial Management Act of 2012 talks about public participation under the 2010 Constitution, then the people by itself are able to decide their priority areas. But right now, you have seen since the inception of this government in 2022, where they were narrowly elected, they imposed the constitution of this finance bill, which most of the Kenyans were not aware before. Because as you are very clearly aware that before 2022, most of the young people never protested or there was no public uproar about the finance bill.
And forgive me for cutting you short, but before 2022, no young person protested. We actually did not see any youths actively involved in politics. So maybe why the change now? You as a young politician also, why the change now?
So I can say, when this government came into place, you are very well aware that most of the African countries are remoted from the Western powers.
Mm-hmm.
And we live under the conditionalities of the US, the IMF, and the World Bank. So when this government came into place, they were imposed to conditionalities that they must respect, failure to which they say there is this view that goes that there is no permanent enemy, there is no permanent friend, there is only permanent interest. And therefore, when this Kenya Kwanza government came into place, they were given conditionalities that they were supposed to respect. And therefore, from that time, they were able to institute this finance bill. That is why you have seen very, very many young people coming out to the street to defend their right, because they say that procedural technicalities cannot override substantive justice. So we are not fighting for these procedural things that have been imposed from the Western powers. We are fighting for our justice. Because you cannot institute a finance bill that is a draconian amendment or a draconian document that does not favor the interest of the young people for the benefit of the Western powers, who are just telling the government that you have to legislate this for our permanent interest to be respected. So therefore, we as young people, the Gen Z, we are saying, because we have been disturbed, perturbed, and our economic status have been fractured and badly damaged, that we do not want to hear anything about the further proliferation of our economic rights. What we want right now is for our economic status to be respected by those in government who will give an opportunity to go and represent us by making laws, making amendments that are going to institute a proper mechanism that is going to bolster a process of removing young people from poverty to middle class. That is what we want to realize. Yes.
And Ngugi, despite the president making some of these changes, because changes like the suspension of the filling of the CAS, and also have the thing about the IEBC, were part of why the Gen Zs were protesting, were part of what the Gen Zs wanted. Now, despite all these changes, we've seen them not relent. They are still saying we are going back to the streets. Why do you think they are not yet satisfied?
Firstly, I must put a disclaimer there that I do not speak on behalf of the Gen Z, because they are leaderless, they are fearless indeed. But my thoughts, the situation we are in right now, we shouldn't, first of all, Gen Z should not be construed to mean a group or a nation, as we say in politics. Like, Gen Z is not just a nation, it's not a group. Currently, Gen Z is a state. And I would like our viewers to have that understanding, that Gen Z, the same way we had the first liberation, then we had the second liberation, now Gen Z is another state that the country is finding itself in. We have people out there who actually now feel there are more Gen Z inside them as compared to their age. It's a state. It's an awakening of the populace. And now, it has come out as a trigger that seeks to give the people, even though they are not young as per se when it comes to years, but young at heart, they feel they can share their frustration using this movement. We had that function that was happening at Uhuru Park. The people who performed there, most of them were not within the ages of Gen Z, but they were able to resonate with these people. So the fact of the matter is this: Gen Zs are not satisfied just because we've withdrawn the finance bill. Remember, they did share out literally, I think, 7 days program on how they are going to achieve these things. Now, the issues of doctors have come in. It is no longer about the finance bill. It's now about the issues of the intern doctors. They are now in there. Now, soon, this now has been created as an avenue. We are going to see other groups coming in to share their frustration using this phase that we are in. And the government need to realize now that is not a particular group that you are going to deal with. Like you will say that these are opposition groups, that these are people who we defeated in the just concluded elections, that these are doctors, that these are nurses. These are states. The nation currently is at a state known as Gen Z. It is no longer about a group. It's about a liberation. And indeed, this group now, the fact that they have achieved the issue to do with the finance bill. Now, the government, the president, has been forced, and he actually said he has now conceded. Now we are having the dissolution of 47 corporations. Now he said he is going to reduce the number of advisors in the office, in his office, in the government advisors, by 50%. But the big question now is this: how do we keep track of this? Because I want to tell the viewer out there, as much as we are talking about reducing all these expenses and everything, let us know there is something known as appropriation bill that has already been assented to, and that gives the president the legal way to spend money. Even finance bill was to give him money. Now he has to go out there and get the 177 billion that he said. So Gen Z are not satisfied because of one thing: they might feel shortchanged. They might feel shortchanged, and the repercussion that will come after that if they feel shortchanged, because these are not people who are like the ages of our parents back then who did not know how to read and write. These are literate group. They go out there, read the finance bill, they go there, read the land amendments bill, I read the IBC bill and the appropriation bill. So the biggest problem that this government now is going to face is dealing with a literate group. Yes.
And Kahil, based on what he has spoken about, does this mean that it is time for us to maybe change how we do politics or how we do governance? Because this is the first time the country has seen this wave of very vile protests, and actually, honestly speaking, these are the first protests that have really bore fruit. The others, they just come and go. Maybe is it time that we try and the leaders try and change how they do their politics when it comes to this literate part of the group?
I think it's time. Kenya is at a state of it's that moment. I think the problem the Kenya Kwanza team or the Kenya Kwanza government find itself in, it wasn't even majorly the finance bill. If you look at things in retro perspective, the Kenya Kwanza team campaigned on something called popular politics and promising a lot of things to young people, to so many people, and they coined the fact of hustler and mama boga, which in retrospect, to layman's term, the people on the ground wanted to see that, which they didn't deliver. So these are things that came building, till when the finance bill was what we call something that breaks the camel's back, or something that ignited the fire. It's something now the people said enough is enough. But where the country finds itself is a situation where leaders make false promises to people on governance and how they'll deliver, and a lot of corruption in government. So I find it that politics in Kenya will change, and if people are going to make good on their word on recalling their MPs, I'm very sure as we go forward, the role of an MP will change. How people view leaders, actually, it has been demystified the whole situation of people calling someone mheshimiwa. It's no longer there, because on Space, Twitter X, formerly Twitter, I had someone calling His Excellency, the President, Baba Shalin. It demystifies power.
That is true. And going back to that particular X-Space conversation or engagement, the president was really looking forward to it. But now the youth being the youth, some of them were actually used the platform to gain more followers, follow. But Kajo, do you think that he really achieved the aim of trying to speak to them? Because what the Gen Zs wanted was to be heard and to be listened to. What the president wanted was to listen to these people, or an audience or an avenue on how to speak with them. Do you think that particular space actually reached the aim the president had?
Thank you. I'll start with the stance of what my friend here said, that the finance bill probably was a straw that broke the camel's back. And that is what ignited the fire and spirits of young people to come out and reclaim back their victory reclaim back their energy, reclaim back their power. And I will say that before independence, we have had three momentous points where we have find ourselves fighting for freedom. The first one was for political freedom from the colonialist. The second one was for democratic order, where we were able to outdo the colonial and the post-colonial despotism. And the third one is for economic emancipation and accountability. And I believe that is one of the key points and reason why the president was invited to the X-Space. Because I want to say this for sure, we are living in a current world, the 21st century, where everything has actually and apparently been transformed and switched to the current trends of technology. And we are not living in the dogmatic times when the traditional media existed. Right now we are living in the times where young people have their phones, they use their gadgets to amplify the message or actually the information they would like to be transpired to other corners of the world. And therefore, when the president came to the X-Space, young people, because of how they were adamantly stratified by how their spirits were demoralized, by how the government was treating them, most of the young people, as you've heard my friend here saying, noted the president as Baba Shalin. And I want to say, without any fear of contradiction, that the era that we are moving to will reach a point where there will be nothing like you are a honorable member, because the problem with these people who are called honorable members is they are not honorable by their actions. So how can you refer to a person as a honorable member and in actions they are not really showcasing the same? So most of these people, we have to show them that indeed for you to be honorable, you must prove beyond doubt that your actions and deeds are honorable, even from the way you speak, how you represent people. That is the only way we are going to respect the call for honorability. Failure to which we do not recognize the honorability in them.
Yeah, that is true. And Ngugi, let's go back to the issue of the whole 177 billion budget being cut. You're a political scientist, so politically, what does this mean for the country? Are we expecting to see maybe changes in the political system? Because I'm cutting some of this, especially the advisors. When he was elected, I'm sure kuna watu waliongea nao pale, I'm supposed to do this, So politically, what does this look like for the country?
I must say this, and I must begin where my brother said here. What you said about, and you had asked the question on whether we are going to change how we now do our politics. And I want to begin by saying that UDA campaigned on its own manifesto, just like the antagonists in the political scene back then. And they had their theory about the better plan, bottom-up economic transformation agenda. It's a theory. At that particular time, it showcased what they want to do and what they want and how they want to do it. Just like any other theory. And I would like the viewer to have this understanding. UDA, just like any theory, has two major roles. One, to explain the current phenomenon we are in. That's why during their campaign, they were there talking about Mama Mboga, vijana wa bodaboda. The problems of the state or the public back then, they were more centralized into Mama Mboga and bodaboda, and it was used to connote the bigger changes and the bigger problems that were there in the populace. Now, they did discuss those particular problems there and then, just like any other particular theory. And the second function of a theory is to predict on how things will be when they come into force 10 years later. That's why we have a manifesto that shows 10 years from now, 5 years from now. This is how we are going to do our things. Now, they did win and they are now in government. Just like any other theory, they should now be able to predict and say, we are here right now, this is what we want to do. The scientific community, and I would like to say, to call it the scientific community of how UDA was manufactured into being a political vehicle or a theory in itself. The scientific community now has been faced with a few anomalies, among them the emergence of Gen Zs. Now, it calls for a paradigm shift all the way from the normal science, which was just UDA, there is a paradigm shift now brought in by Gen Zs, and now the scientific community within UDA needs to go back, sit down and understand that now UDA is slowly degenerating into a research program that can no longer predict what is going to happen. So the scientific community either ought to alter the outer core of the UDA or the inner core of the UDA and come up with something better. On how we are going to do, on how they should do, and I'm not in a position to advise the government, but I must say, the president right now has been left alone in the cabinet to fight everything that Gen Zs are bringing around. He's out there defending his own government. The Gen Zs have gone to the inner core of UDA, which is at the heart of the presidency. The outer core of UDA should be those members elected through UDA party and those members of the cabinet appointed by His Excellency the President. Now, the current situation, politically you asked, with cutting down the 177 billion, are we going to see changes politically? Yes, number one. If, and we are saying if, the money we were seeing being splattered across Harambes, across maybe, sorry to say, in other gatherings, we would see opulence, and as my brother here said, and the arrogance in giving this money, were proceeds of crime. If they were, then, and that particular trajectory where that, where some would gain an advantage from proceeds or otherwise has been cut, then the result of force should be that those should also reduce. Now, the question is this: we have cut sources of revenue. What we have cut is not expenditure; it's sources of revenue. Is where to get money, and the populace must understand that what we've cut is sources of revenue through the finance bill, but we've not cut our expenditure. As for this year, which began on July 1st, and the appropriation bill came into force. So the president is allowed to spend. He is allowed to spend by law. What we did cut from him is on how to get the money to spend. But if he decides to go and borrow, he said he's going to borrow 170 something billion out of the 350. Finance bill was only supposed to give us more than what we collected last year, which is 300 more with to a tune of 350 billion. But we did collect taxes last year. Just, I think yesterday, I saw that KRA had surpassed the I think it had gone past with the 2.1% or something of the sort in collecting taxes. So our issue is not on collecting taxes. Our issue is on this expenditure. But we must understand now that the role now is in Parliament. Do they repeal what the president signed into law? Do we go and stage other protests and tell the president, no, we have learned something, that you indeed signed the appropriation bill that gives you power to spend this money that you did not have. Now, are you going to get this money? Politically, yes, because if you scrap off the office of the Prime Cabinet Secretary and you had an arrangement when you acquired in this government, you say, you know what, you're going to be my Prime Cabinet Secretary. And then you also get done with the office of the spouse. You get done with the office of the spouse to the deputy president, and also your first lady. I mean, let's be as realistic and as logical as we can be. If the president has his allocation, I mean, we do not expect the first lady to suffer. If the deputy president has his allocation, we do not expect the spouse to suffer. The spouse indeed did say of the deputy president that although it has been scrapped off, they are going to continue with the campaign on Bochal. So why then did they need the man?
Yeah, and still on the changes, we've seen some senators, a section of senators come out to say that what you're giving us is not what we want. What we want is for you. And we saw Sifuna, the senator for Nairobi, saying that what they need is not for the budget to be cut, it's for us to stop wastage. Maybe, Kahyu, how long are we going to hear this story of wastage?
I'll first of all tell people that accountability is not a 1 day or a 1 week process, and keeping the government in check isn't something that will stop today, or we are going to now give up after just a few months. It's something that now we should take up for the rest of how we stay, because we're supposed to keep the government in check. First of all, is what you call is momentous wasting of money and momentous corruption. Yesterday, the Auditor General said the one thing that the Kenya Kwanza team campaigned is the hustler funds. That is their core thing. And their most core thing is losing money to a tune of 10 billion Kenyan shillings. There must be something fundamentally wrong with your government if your most core project is losing that amount of money. The next thing is, I found the president saying that they'll audit debt. And even when it's in court right now and it was stopped, the first thing people are supposed to know is there shouldn't be task forces to audit debt, because there's an office that does that, the office of the Auditor General. And even 2 days ago, she released a statement saying that also 1.2 billion can't be accounted at e-citizen platform, where the government said it will centralize all payments to avoid corruption. So this government is telling us, we're going to centralize all the monies to avoid corruption, but when the money goes to that system, most of it gets stolen and not accounted for. So there's something fundamentally wrong with this Kenya Kwanza team and this Kenya Kwanza government, because money is leaking left, right, and center, and the government and the president need to sit down with himself and ask himself, where am I taking this nation to? Because everyone is calling for the firing of all CSs because they don't have right now the feeling that the atmosphere is they have lost faith in this government. And I'll take you back to a moment of 2005 when Kibaki lost the referendum, when it was the orange and the no. Kibaki fired everyone is in his government to regain trust and to move forward as a government. William Ruto is in that position right now. If he doesn't fire everyone in government, he will lose it. That is all I have to say.
Kajwang, as a president, what is he looking at in the future? Because he still has 3 more years to go. It's only been 2 years. What is he looking at, especially with the young generation now coming up to challenge each and every decision that he's making, and also to challenge each and every move that he's making, to make him accountable? So should this whole wave go away, what is the president looking at?
Thank you so much. I will start by saying my friend has noted something that is very specific and objective that the former President Kibaki did. That the time Kibaki took power in 2002, the economic growth was 0.6%. But in the first 5 years, he was able to energize and integrate the economic growth to 7%. And that is something that most of these people in this government keep referencing every time. But like the economic advisor is very incompetent and inept. He's just very good in keyboard warring on X, telling people and advising them by giving them the rhetorics of economics, but is not doing any fundamentality to ensure that the economy is at its best. So, my opinion will be, my personal opinion will be, the president should not show any mercy to any person in his government, because most of the people in his government are the people who are actually failing him big time. The degree at which the president has lost public trust is unprecedented. Only 2 years, the Gen Z have come out in their big numbers to fight against the wanton theft and corruption by malevolent fellows who are in his government. And that is what the Gen Zs are making their clamor for. So I will personally advise or give an opinion to the president, if that opportunity was to be presented to me, that to fire all cabinet secretaries. Fire all of them, everyone should go home. Because you've seen, it has been going viral, everyone knows it. Most of the people who are his friends, close allies, or people serving in his government have just stolen a lot of money, because how can people be buying properties left, right, and center? Some of them are even transferring money to offshore accounts. Therefore, we cannot be able to account for something if we are not being very truthful and honest to ourselves. That is why we as the Gen Z have taken it as personal responsibility to ensure that we reclaim back the power and the vigor of our country, because our country, this is Kenya, this is our country, and no one can pretend, no one can hypocritically criticize what we are doing. Because when this revolution of protest started, most of the fellows in his government were saying, oh, there is just an amorphous protest. These are just guys who are just coming out, like the majority leader said, that we are taking pictures, we have iPhones, and immediately we finish the protest, we go to take kuku. So you can clearly see the arrogant and the opulence being demystified by people in this government. And therefore, I would like to cite a citation that made a lot of importance that encourages the Gen Z to continue with the protest. If you remember very well, Tom Mboya, when they were fighting for the political freedom of this country, and Dedan Kimathi led the Mau Mau, Tom Mboya led the labor unions. They were in their 20s. Martin Luther King Jr. was 26 years old when he led the Montgomery bus boycott. And therefore, that is why these Gen Z are also ardently and vigorously fighting for freedom, to ensure those in government are able to account for our money. Because there's nothing as painful as paying your taxes, you are taxing these people to death, you are bringing principles like this economic advisor is telling us of principles that do not even exist, is quoting rhetorics, is quoting economic jargons that is not going to help us as a country. And therefore we will want to tell everyone, even these MPs that were elected, some of them were saying that personally I was elected by the people, yes, but I will serve the interest of the president. You are not elected by the people to serve the interest of the president. You are elected by the people to listen to them, take their views into consideration, so that when you go to parliament to make laws and legislation, you are going to do what? To put that into consideration in times of legislation. Another one says that I was not elected. It is the party, the UDA, that was elected. And therefore I will serve I will be loyal to the party, and I will vote in accordance with the jurisdiction and guidance of the party. And these are the kind of fellows that we should not be having in parliament. And therefore, that is why we are advocating for, at this time, as the Gen Z or the young generation, because we are past the political creeds that were made by these old dudes of tribes, regions, multicultural, all these facets. We are coming to a scenario where we are voting for intelligent people. We are voting for people who understand how to talk in parliament, how to introduce bills into parliament, how to bring ideas, listen to people, bring those views into consideration. My member of parliament from Narok North constituency went to the people. Immediately after shouting yes in parliament to the finance bill, told the people that these young people who are shouting to the top of their voices have not read the finance bill. And I know her myself. She's not good in reading. She doesn't understand details. So how can you go to the parents, hypnotize them, and make a clarification of we, who are learned and literate enough to understand the constitution of the finance bill, you go to the parents, you tell them, we have not read the bill. Who has not read the bill? He shouted yes, and then again, when things were pressured high, he again shouted no. So there is no balance. She is not able to understand the specifics. That means she never read the finance bill. She doesn't understand. She was just going for public. She was just being hypnotized and waved to vote on the basis of public opinion. Mm-hmm. So we do not want such kind of members of parliament. Next time.
Yeah, and Ngugi, at what point shall we have an understanding between the government and the people? Because majority of the Kenyans are Gen Zs, whether we like it or not. They are either Gen Zs or millennials. At what point are we going to reach an understanding so that this whole issue can be solved?
I must start with what my brother here is saying, and I think you can understand his position. Having been, he feels left out during the voting in the National Assembly. But first things first is why what is the scenario that the president is finding himself in the current scenario? And why is it that he has not fired some people, as Gen Zs have told him to? I want to share these thoughts as to why maybe the president has not. Niccolo Machiavelli was writing the book titled Prince. He advised the prince. It was an advice to him, because initially or traditionally you would first acquire the mantle of leadership from the king. Either you overthrow the king or the king dies. Now the prince was being advised by Niccolo Machiavelli, just like President Uhuru left the presidency, and now the deputy has taken the leadership, either through voting or otherwise. Niccolo advised the new prince now, and this is William Ruto. He advised and told him, be careful with those people who help you acquire political power, because when they do wrong, you cannot punish them. That's one of the sacred rules of acquisition of political power, that you need to be careful with those people who help you acquire political power, because when they do wrong, you won't be able to punish them, because they know you too well. The people among them whom the Gen Zs have told the president that, man, you have incompetent people in your cabinet or in the areas of leadership that are helping you drive your government, the incompetent, some of them help him acquire political power. Being a student of Niccolo Machiavelli, that's why he's finding it hard to fire. He either protects the first love or have the last laugh. So, moving forward, how does the government now engage the people? How do we get an understanding, as you've asked? It starts from the bottom down there, going by their sayings. And the populace need to understand that when you vote, who do you do when you vote, and who are the government? If you go to parliament buildings, the first thing there, written towards the entrance of the parliament, is, I think, for just government and welfare of the society. Just government of the people and welfare of the society. The first engagement when it comes to government starts with your voting. When you vote, what do you do? Because that is the next area that Gen Zs are now fighting for, that we want the IEBC reconstituted so that we have a mass voter registration, then we can be able now to deal with all the other issues. Now, when you vote, what do you do? Because that is your first engagement with government. When you vote, you surrender all your rights. Kajuan,
Yes.
sorry, if your member of parliament, voted against you, but I don't know if you voted for her or it's him.
I never voted.
But if those people who voted for that particular member of parliament, they surrendered their rights. Once you surrender your rights, among them is the right to protect yourself. That's why when they go in, they make laws, come up in institutions like police and everything, so that when I hit Kajwang here, and I wouldn't, he wouldn't have to hit me back. He'll go to the police station and say, oh, someone has hit me. In anarchy, I would have hit him and he would have hit me back. So you surrender your rights. You surrender your political rights. Among other things, your right to legislate, your right to oversight, and your right to represent yourself in parliament. Now, that is the first engagement with government, whether it is coming or going or leaving office. President William Ruto, at some point, I think he was the deputy, said, it is the people who hire and fire governments.
Yes.
He said it is the people who hire and fire governments. Government interactions are always there, day in, day out. How does the government interact with the people? Because the people are interacting with the government, but is government in a position to interact with the people? During the protests, you saw that the Gen Zs were a bit organized, and they did beat government hands down when it comes to dealing with protesters. On X Space, the president himself acknowledged that when the majority leaders spoke such words, he did call him and told him, my friend, that's not how you speak to people. So, if those are the people who represent the president, and they are speaking in such a manner, that the president now has to come all the way to defend his government to the people that put it there, then the engagement that this government now is going to have will be one. As was said by one of the last persons who spoke on X, and told him, Mr. President, I am angered by this government. And if this is going to continue, we are going to get the votes, and we are going to send those people home, including you. President is conscious that it's the people who hire and fire government. But The channels of now engagement we have seen Gen Z. The question that this government now should be having is, who are we engaging? And that is where the Gen Zs are having a field day with government, because they are leaderless. They are telling him, come to X. You come to X, then the president here, he's left bare knuckle. Nobody is there to protect him. So the questions are asked, and we can see, we could feel. But I do not want to say that all is lost, because this is just a government that is in place, and it might be leaving, but the nation will be there. But the government need now to listen and not just hear. They need to listen. There is a difference between hearing and listening. They've heard so much. Now they need to listen and know what are the people saying. Way back, and this government was largely supported by people who believed, who were in religion and everything. There was King Solomon, when he left power. There was one of the sons to Solomon who came in to take after the reins of his dad. And when he came into power, he said, you see, my father used to beat you people naked. And so painful. But under me, actually it's going to be worse. He was elders tried to advise him, but they couldn't. Now, President William Ruto needs now to do this. He needs to listen to the people who can advise him. Actually, he should scrap off all those advisors. I mean, why should we have 50 advisors? Or not 50, but if we have so many advisors that they can be cut into half and still the government operates, we can still go to a third.
That is right. And Nkomo, maybe what should the president really do to quell the anger of these young people?
Okay, I'll say a problem has a solution, and the president finds himself in a quagmire. First of all, he doesn't have the confidence of the people, and him not having the confidence of the people, he needs to regain first of all the confidence of the people, because that is the one major thing that he has lost among the people. With all this that is happening, the president needs to hold a very honest conversation. And on X, I remember there are sentiments that people say that on Tuesday, 25th June, which will remain a very, very historical date in Kenya, on Tuesday at around 9:15, the president came to address the nation, and he didn't appear sympathetic to anyone who lost lives, and it was a lot, and there was a lot going on, and that defined him. The president needs to know that him just acting defines who he is and what he is. So right now, the people have a feeling the president is not sympathetic, the president is not truthful, and I will rather say, even when the roundtable discussion was happening, there was a question that Linus Kaikai said, people don't associate him with the truth. That is a very bad sentiment coming from people, because what will you tell the people that will believe? So first of all is redefining himself. He should make himself more believable to the people and more endowed to the people, not to his political class people, because right now the citizens and the political class are at a tug of war, because they're finding it's you against us, because you people are not listening to us, and when we elect you to office, you're misrepresenting us, and misrepresentation comes in matters of even there's no austerity in government, there's a lot of stealing, or there's a lot of wastage of resources. So that is things that should come to stop, so that the people can feel we have trust again with this government. But it is not something that will start today and tomorrow the people are back in dalliance with the government. It may take, actually, I will say this, if this continues till 2027, a 90% chance is William Ruto going to be elected back into office. Yes. And
maybe because of the interest of time, I'll give each one of you a minute to give maybe one advice to the president out there as a young person, as a young politician, and also to your fellow peers out there who are protesting against this. I'll start with Kajwang.
Thank you so much. The prescription of the Latin says sumus pro populo, which gives a prescription of we stand with the people. And that is in tandem with Article 1 of our Constitution that says all the sovereign powers belongs to the people. And therefore the President, with all due respect, must be able to listen to the people, as my friend here has said. And I want to say specifically to the government of Kenya Kwanza, which is made up of malevolent, corrupt, and populist individuals who are just opportunistic to be given an opportunity to serve the people. And that time they were telling us during campaigns, wamesikiza ground. I want to tell them specifically during this time, also go back to the ground, the same ground, listen to the ground, what people are saying, and be able to do in accordance with their wishes. I want to tell the government of Kenya that great people, great princes, great kings, emperors, presidents are always brought down by the power of the people. You can remember the imperialist Mubarak, you can remember the imperialist Mobutu. They were able to respect the principles of what the Western powers were telling them. And immediately a revolt came in their countries. Those Western powers were able to drop them like a hot potato. And therefore I would want to tell the president not to be an imperialist. Because once there is a revolt and a protest like this one, the US, which in fact signed an ally for the NATO just a few weeks ago, they will be able to drop you. And there's nowhere else you can run apart from coming back to Kenya, coming back to your people. Because the very, very same people who elected you in 2022, they are very, very same people that you are going back to request for them to give you an opportunity to continue with what? With the leadership. And therefore, as I finalized, I want to continue, I want to really applaud and give accolades to the Gen Zs who came out in their numbers to fight back for their freedom, emancipation of economic freedoms, and putting these people into accountability. And these members of parliament who voted yes for the finance bill, we will not forget. We are going to come for you where you are. We are going to ensure that you are accountable to our money, and every other cabinet secretary who has stolen our money. We are also going to follow up to ensure that our money imerudishwa. Hakuna mtu mwenye ameiba pesa yetu atakimbia na pesa yetu. Whether you are governor before, ama ulikuwa nini before, we want to tell all these agencies that have the responsibility constitutionally to check those corrupt individuals, to bring them to book, because we are tired of this corrupt playbook of politicians playing around with our money na kutu waste up around. So I want to give accolades, I want to appreciate everyone, and say that we are going forward to ensure that we emancipate ourselves from shackles of oppression and cronies.
Thank you, Kajwang. Ngugi.
To President William Samoei Ruto, the only thing that does not change is change itself. Protagoras said so. I ask of you, Mr. President, that may the spirit that read the writings on the deathbed of Thomas Joseph Mboya that read, go fight like this man who died fighting for mankind's cause, whose battles are still unwon. I kindly ask of you to choose either the last love or the first love.
That is very short and brief and to the point. And then Makahi, wrap it up for us.
To the President of the Republic of Kenya, I will just give him one short statement. It's a Latin statement, Vox Populi, and the voice of the people is the voice of God. And we are at that moment. So it is you to define where as a nation we are, and I hope you have the intelligence, the wisdom to take us to a better place and not to chaos and anarchy.
Thank you. That has been George Ngugi Gashoka. In the middle, he's a political scientist and a public administrator. To the far end, SK Kajwang, a national youth leader. And of course, Ngomo Kahyu, a political commentator. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for making it today and for having this particular panel discussion. And of course, thank you to you back at home, our viewer, for keeping it Oracle Television Network. Remember that we do this each and every day of the week at 9 a.m. on the Oracle News Brief. And don't forget to catch the Morning Dew, also the first segment of the Morning Dew from 8 a.m. all the way to 9 a.m. But till tomorrow, I have been your host, Ruth Wanjiru. I expect to see you tomorrow, same time, same place. Have a good day.